the Let's Go Live button. So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet on this Thursday. Before we get into it, we have to make sure that the tubes are working, and we've made some tube improvements over here at the facility. And hopefully it works today. We're going to continue to test it. It looks like they're working thus far. That's great news. Let's get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today we are talking about conviction. Now, this is a word that has dual meanings. We have, of course, the convictions that came out in the Proud Boys trial, which is what we're going to spend a bit of time unpacking today. There were some problematic verdicts that came out, troubling verdicts indeed, about seditious conspiracy. 4 of the 5 got convicted of the big charge. We're going to go through it and hit the highlights about how the verdicts unfolded today in court. We've got 2 threads. We've already got a motion for a mistrial that came out from Carmen Hernandez. So we'll take a look at that. We have some questions about Dominic Pezzola, because the good news here, of all the bad news, is that he got acquitted of seditious conspiracy, which is, whoa, what? He was kind of the poster child for this whole thing. He was the guy who had the shield. He was the guy who was breaking the window down. And he got acquitted of seditious conspiracy. So even though there was a lot of bad news that came out today, I'll tell you this, the government is not happy about this one. And so we'll break that down. We got questions. Why was he acquitted on that charge? We'll explore some possibilities. We've got reaction from Norm Pattis, one of the defense attorneys who was there representing the Proud Boys. And then I want to spend some time on this chart, which is a great chart over from Lawfare blog that details who got convicted of what and who got acquitted of what. And you can see Dominic Pezzola not guilty on seditious conspiracy, or he was acquitted of that. I think this chart is not updated yet. Well, we'll go through it. We'll see exactly what's going on as we break it down, because I want to go through the trial threads first. Norm Pattis, as I mentioned, responded. The Department of Justice is already going hog wild here. Merrick Garland came out spring loaded. He's like, well, I've been waiting for this. Hey! So he got his little press briefing, went out and put it on the teleprompter and read it. And he said this is a great day for justice. This is a great moment where the DOJ has shown that it can go and get justice, or I was going to say revenge, but justice. And they did it without encroaching on everybody's rights and freedoms and liberties. And obviously, as you can see here, I've got a couple questions about that. Some areas where I think he's not being exactly honest with us, because the DOJ acted in a disgusting fashion here in collusion with the FBI. And no matter how much he comes out and explains to us that they speak by their filings and they adhere to justice and all this crap, we know it's not true. So they can pretend and play this game like little puppets, but we know what is really going on here. What is the next plan of attack? Of course, it's Trump. We're going to break that down as well. We've got a tweet from Julie Kelly, and then we'll connect the dots here. Why was this so important? Because they're just warming up. So all of that in the first segment. Then we're going to turn our attention over to spotlightlawyer.com/Trump. The mind map is available there. This is the Trump trial. We are in day 7 of this. If you want to follow along at home, you can do that. Spotlightlawyer.com/Trump. If you go there, it will open this up. You can see we are in day 7. We've had a bunch of other days all the way from day 1. And you can access this if you want to follow along. You can click open these little nodes and explore around all of these different tentacles of this trial. But we are today going to be in day 7, and we've got some interesting news to attend to. Updates about Reid Hoffman. I have a full video on this detailing his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Trump issued a statement from Scotland today, and we have other witnesses who showed up. Carol Martin, E. Jean Carroll's friend, one of the first people allegedly that E. Jean Carroll confided in after this whole thing went down, along with this person, Ashley Humphreys, a professor from Northwestern University, who came in to talk about damages from Trump's mean tweets. And we'll take a look at her background, because she also doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about Trump. We'll go and check in with the trial thread, courtesy of our friend Matthew Russell Lee over at Inner City Press, doing a great job being there on the ground. And honestly, if you're interested in this case, you really should follow him. He's got videos, he's filing additional motions. There's a whole separate layer to this case that you're not getting here because I want you to go get it from him. Matthew Russell Lee at Inner City Press. You can also subscribe to his Substack at matthewrusselllee.icp.substack.com. He's there. He's literally in New York attending the whole thing. So check all of that out over there. And my friends, as you can see, we've got a lot to get to today. So if you want to be a part of the program, well, the best place you can do that is by heading on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have an amazing community. Any way you want to join as a member is a great way to support the show. It's a great way to connect with me and others after hours, after the show is over here, in our morning member-only streams. It's a great way to connect, and you can join on YouTube. You can join at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We'd love to see you. No matter where you join, don't forget to grab the private Telegram group so you can chat with us after the stream ends. It's the chat that goes on and on, my friends. Now, of course, we've got some serious legal business to get to today, and we can't do it unless we're properly fortified and nutrified. And one of the best ways to do that is by going to fieldofgreens.com, because we all would like to lose those leftover pandemic pounds, wouldn't we? And how sick are you of all those ads for weight loss pills and fad diets? We've all been there. We've all done that. They just don't work. You know what does? Eating healthy, especially 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. It's super easy. You do that and the weight would probably just fall right off. But look, vegetables, I know, fruit takes a lot of work to prepare this every day. It doesn't keep that long. Instead, let's use Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula. Very specific fruits and vegetables you're not going to find in any other product. We have metabolic blends, antioxidant blends, all sorts of amazing stuff in there, because proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com. When you get there, load up on all the goodies and save 15% with code Robert when you check out. The vegetables want to be eaten. Your body wants the vegetables to be eaten. You're going to be bursting with green energy, the good kind, all courtesy of our friends at fieldofgreens.com. Check them out. And don't forget to use code Robert when you get there. All right, my friends. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes on the day. Proud Boy verdicts come out, mostly bad news, with some hints of interesting outcomes in the case of Dominic Pezzola. So let's get into it one by one. After days of deliberation, the jury rendered a verdict in the Proud Boys case, and it started with this note. Coming in, it said, Your Honor, we have reached unanimous verdicts on all of the charges except for the following. Count 1, Goal 1, Count 2 as to Pezzola, Count 7 as to Nordine, Biggs, Rehl, and Tario, and Count 8 as to all defendants. Jury Note 9. And that kicked off the day. We're going to go over to Kyle Cheney, reporting for Politico, who broke down how this unfolded this morning. He says, happening now. Verdicts expected in the Proud Boys trials momentarily. Lawyers, defendants pouring into the courtroom. This comes after 6 days of deliberation. And the big question is about seditious conspiracy, which is exactly right. The government has a narrative that they want to continue to proffer forward. They've already convicted several people via plea agreement. They've already convicted other people in the Oath Keepers seditious conspiracy trial. This would be the third batch of convictions that they got through a trial. So they want that charge to stick, and they want it to stick for all of them. The other charges are harder to defend. In fact, many of the other charges, they just gave up. They just said, yeah, you know what? We did do some damage. Yeah, we did interfere. We did some other things here and there, but not sedition. This wasn't a giant conspiracy. Sure, we were trespassing. Nobody even contends that. In fact, if they offered them a plea deal to just a trespass charge or something other than that, I'm very inclined to believe they would have taken it. But they needed this charge to stick, in my opinion, because they're coming after Trump. Kyle says there are other felony charges on the list. Yeah, obstruction, impeding officers, and so on. But everybody's back in the courtroom and Judge Kelly's on the bench. Now they're discussing with the lawyers what to do after accepting the partial verdict. Now this came in piecemeal. We didn't get all the verdicts delivered at the same time because there are so many defendants and so many different charges and counts. They would decide on some, turn them into the judge, decide on others. The DOJ is urging Kelly, send the jurors back, keep deliberating. We have Norm Pattis and Carmen Hernandez. They're saying, Your Honor, don't take the partial verdict. The jury has said they're deadlocked on the unresolved counts, and so make them come back with everything. The judge said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to take the partial verdict. I want to get this over with. And tell the jury it can continue to deliberate on the remaining counts. So they come in momentarily. He says, all right, get your bags, jurors. You're coming back in here. Now, jury walks into the courtroom, and the jury agrees there was a seditious conspiracy. One by one. Proud Boy Ethan Nordine. As to the charge of seditious conspiracy, we, the people, find Proud Boy Ethan Nordine guilty of seditious conspiracy. Same thing for Biggs. The verdict? Guilty. Zachary Rehl, guilty. And you see here Kyle Cheney, Tario, guilty of seditious conspiracy, the full count. Getting some extra words in there because Enrique Tario is the leader of the Proud Boys. Now you'll notice that we're missing something here. That's interesting. Ethan Nordine, Biggs, Rehl, Tario. What about Dominic Pezzola? And you remember Dominic Pezzola. He was the poster boy of this entire thing. He was the person who stole the shield. He was the person who broke the window. He was the most violent person in this whole thing. There he is. He's got the shield right in front of him right there. And he's not a part of this conspiracy? He hasn't been convicted yet? Well, that's weird. He says all defendants but Pezzola are also guilty of all of the other conspiracies. Jury seems deadlocked on some other counts. And Kyle gives us some updates there. Now, immediately after that partial verdict was rendered, there was a motion filed by Carmen Hernandez. She wasn't playing around. She said, hey, you don't have any authority to take a partial verdict. What's wrong with you, Judge? She sent this in. She said, Your Honor, we object to the taking of the partial verdict. Filed May 4th, says my client, Mr. Rehl, through undersigned counsel, hereby respectfully objects to the taking of a partial verdict as to the seditious conspiracy charge, while the jury is still deliberating on the other co-conspirators' counts. There is no authority for taking a partial verdict under these circumstances, and as the jury deliberations have now been improperly interrupted, Your Honor, my client moves for a mistrial as to count one. Signed, your friend, Carmen Hernandez. Sent into the court on that one. You can understand that's going to be declined. So the jury note, as we saw, was also submitted 9:35 in the morning. So this came in pretty quickly. Different counts they had some questions about. So the judge sent them back in and said continue to decide. And they finally came out with some verdicts. So that is the update. Now there was an afternoon second set of verdicts that came out. And for that, we'll go over to Roger Parloff, who will catch us up. He says, Judge Kelly is now back on the bench. We have a jury note. The note says, apparently, among other things, and I tried to dig this one up, but it wasn't posted before showtime. Said, apparently, among other things, all jurors firmly believe that further deliberation will not lead to unanimous verdicts on any of the other counts. So Metcalf, for the defense, moves on for mistrials. He says we should have mistrials for Pezzola as to counts 2 and 8. And apparently, with respect to Metcalf's motion, we do not oppose. Sounds like further deliberations will not be useful. And so the judge says, yeah, I'm inclined to declare them hung on those counts. I will declare a mistrial, but they have a verdict as to count 1, seditious conspiracy, as it relates to Pezzola, but no further verdicts on the other counts. So they're going to declare mistrials on those. The defense wants to speak with the jurors after this is excused. Apparently there's local rules that say, got to ask the judge for that. So the judge says, well, I'll let you know after the verdict. Biggs' lawyer also wants to speak to the jurors. The jury comes in. Now the judge is having the jury led back out again. They're asking for a short sidebar, and the jury comes back. Juror 14 stands up, hands up the additional verdict. Judge Kelly says, and I'm sure this was really hard for him to read, as to count 1, seditious conspiracy, the jury finds defendant Dominic Pezzola not guilty. He's probably like, not guilty? What? All right. All right. So Judge Kelly is now polling the jury on that verdict. Do you agree with the partial verdict that was announced? Yes. Do you? Yes. Do you? Yes. Do you? Yes. Okay. Well, I'm going to declare mistrials on all of the other charges. And so, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are going to relieve you of any further obligation to deliberate. I want to express my thanks for your service in this case. You've been extremely diligent and patient. He praises them for their conscientious service and public service and then dismisses them. So we've got verdicts now. They're all convicted of various charges. They're all going to be sentenced. None of them go free today. So the judge says we better settle some post-trial motions and other requests for mistrials and appeals and all the things. Says, how much time do you guys need for your post-trial motions? They say, I don't know, about a week. All right. Well, the probation department's pre-sentence report is going to be expected by 9/13. And this means that in broad strokes, when a judge does sentencing, the judge hears multiple different parties. The government's going to come out and they're going to say, these were insurrectionists who tried to steal the country. Give them 1,000,000 years, Judge. The defense is going to come out and say, no, this was all set up by the FBI. This trial was a sham. Our clients are innocent. They never did any of this stuff. Give them probation, right? They're going to ask for both of these things. The judge is going to say, how about you, this neutral party over at the probation department? Why don't you give us your report? Why don't you interview these defendants, ask them a bunch of questions, see what their likelihood to reoffend is and all the things, put it in a report so the judge can get an objective report. Then the defense will submit their sentencing memo. The government will submit their sentencing memo. The judge will get an independent opinion by this from the probation department, and then he'll make his decision. So that report is going to be expected by September. They're going to have a pre-sentencing hearing sometime late July. They're planning out logistics, and we're still waiting for the official verdict forms to come out from the court so that we can see them. And as I said, I checked before the show and I didn't see them published yet. So what does this all mean? Let's break it down and try to understand what happened here. We've got the 5 different co-defendants who were here charged with crimes. You see them listed up top: Nordine, Biggs, Rehl, Tario, and Pezzola. Dominic Pezzola was the only person who testified. And when we were covering that, we said, holy moly, this was a big effort. This was almost like throwing himself on the grenade. He went out, almost sacrificed himself for his other co-defendants. He said, I am here accepting responsibility for what I did. Don't blame these guys. And we were scratching our heads going, this is crazy. He might be exonerating the others while burying himself because he was explaining in his cross-examination that he thought this was a sham. This was a scam. They had no evidence in this case. And he was being very aggressive with the prosecutor. And you know, the judge is not going to like that. And the prosecutor is not going to like that. And we're even thinking the jury might not like that. Maybe they'll convict him just on that basis. But they didn't convict him of this one charge, this seditious conspiracy charge. This says there was no verdict yet, but we know now there was a verdict. It's not guilty. This should be a green square right here. Not guilty. And so I'm sure they updated the chart. But everybody else got convicted of this thing. And so the big question is why? Why did Pezzola not get convicted of seditious conspiracy? And this is a loss for the government. They want everybody who's even remotely connected to be guilty of seditious conspiracy. If they could get every one of us, I'm sure that they would do it if they could. But they can't. And this is a hint that the jury was not giving the same broad reading that the government was giving that would included any type of connection, which Pezzola arguably had. They just said it wasn't strong enough for some reason. Maybe that's one explanation for it. We'll explore some others. But as to count 2, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, you see all of the other Proud Boys got convicted on all of them. There were some hung jury counts on throwing water bottles. And let me see if there's a more recent chart here. Yes, this even looks... Here's the final version. Here is the updated version. Yes. So not applicable. You see at the bottom, count 10, here we go. So this one looks updated now. Pezzola, you see, is the not guilty. There was no verdict, so we're declaring mistrials on all of these blue diamonds. And then we got all of the assaulting chart. These are pretty obvious down here. Nordine, Biggs, Rehl, and Tario. They weren't really involved in the taking of the riot shield. But do you see how the government charged this? They wanted to say that they were involved in the conspiracy. They're all guilty of all the crimes because they were all in a conspiracy. But the jury didn't see it that way. They said, no, Pezzola is not part of this conspiracy. Only he took the shield. So only he is guilty of taking the shield. The others were not guilty of that, even though they were in a conspiracy together. So we're trying to tease out the logic here. So they're treating Pezzola as an individual, saying they didn't even get him on the water bottle charge. Wow, look at that. So they didn't get any convictions on the water bottle charge. What a stupid charge that was. And I'll move myself over here now. The water bottle charge, no verdicts on that one. Destruction of property, the window, Pezzola got that. So they separated him out from the conspiracy and they charged him individually. And the question is why? What was it that prompted them to do that? And we have some speculation about it. There were some hints that he was just not a part of the leadership chats. Remember, a big part of this testimony was all about the chats. They had telegrams, they had parlors. Did you retweet that? And he was retweeting Parler. Did you like that Parler? Yeah. Did you retweet it? Yeah. So is it the fact that he wasn't as embedded as the others? Maybe. Part of his testimony was that he also just met them in the courtroom. I didn't even know these guys. We just met him after I got arrested. He also wasn't really involved in a lot of the prior rallies. And he was also the person who was there who was testifying. And so sometimes maybe the jury just gave him the benefit of the doubt because he just said something. But what he said was getting up there and said, we didn't know anything about this conspiracy. And so the jury didn't believe that part. They didn't believe that he was credible in saying the other guys were not a part of the conspiracy or that there was no conspiracy. So it's very interesting. It is unfortunate that the government has been able to blame 5 people for a seditious conspiracy when they're, now in this case, 4 people with seditious conspiracy when, in my opinion, there was very, very weak evidence about all of it. And we're going to get to that here in a short second, where some of these missteps were on behalf of the DOJ and the FBI. Defense attorney Norm Pattis commented on this on Twitter. He said, Proud Boys trial ends on a disappointing note for those supporting them. The haters will crow, and they are doing that, and the government will cheat. It was a difficult trial. The appeal, though, is promising. Much love to the Proud Boys and to their supporters. And so I agree with that statement wholeheartedly, and we thank the defense attorneys for putting their hearts and souls into this case. It was a long, long haul, and a lot of defense attorneys wouldn't have the stones to do it. They did. So shout out to Norm and all of the other defense attorneys on this case. Tough day. Now, the DOJ is spring loaded. As soon as the conviction came down, Merrick Garland was squirming in his seat. He was so excited. Do I have my statement ready? We've been working on this whole thing for years, even before January 6th. So now we can't wait to go take out Donald Trump. And so they just popped up out of nowhere. They had the statement ready to go. He's very good at reading things and then not taking questions. Here is what the bare end of his statement said. Let's listen.
And now, after 3 trials, we have secured the convictions of leaders of both the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers for seditious conspiracy.
Wow.
Specifically, conspiring to oppose by force the lawful transfer of presidential power. Our work will continue.
They're going to go back to their coloring books and start playing their Where's Waldo games, searching for more Lego sets to go capture all of the ultra mega insurrectionists. But did you listen to his language there? Very careful. He said it was the peaceful transfer of power, of presidential power. You know, he's not saying it's just the peaceful interruption of power or the obstruction of the operation of democracy or any of those things. It's about, because if he'd said that, well, we've got other examples where there are other efforts insurrecting various Capitol buildings in various states and other governmental facilities around this country. So he's going to actually shrink this hula hoop a little bit to say it only matters, it's only really relevant to the presidential powers and the peaceful transfer and the operation of democracy as to that. Because there's all sorts of pink-haired protesters all over. I don't know what they're doing, but they're insurrecting, it feels like, Capitol buildings all over the place. We know that interference with the operation, interference with the transfer of power or the functional operation of government is enough. Let's listen.
At my Senate confirmation hearing just over a month after January 6th, I promised that the Justice Department would do everything in its power to hold accountable those responsible for the heinous attack that sought to disrupt a cornerstone of our democracy, the peaceful transfer of power to a newly elected government. And as I have said repeatedly, the department will conduct all of its work in a manner that adheres to the rule of law and honors our obligations to protect the civil rights and civil liberties of everyone in this country. Today's verdict.
Accept your political enemies. Accept the people you disagree with. Anybody who even opines differently is now subject to inquisition by the DOJ. They've called it and said that they are reorganizing entire efforts. They created the Disinformation Governance Board. Remember that one? Before America called them out for being psychopaths. So they're not really interested in adhering to the traditional notions of civil liberties or protecting civil rights of everyday Americans. They want convictions.
Is another example of our steadfast commitment to keeping those promises.
No.
The Justice Department will never stop working to defend the democracy to which all Americans are entitled.
You guys are wrecking it, and I hope it's worth it because the pendulum swings both ways, and it will come back to bite all of us in the end. But he was there crying about how much they care about civil liberties. They don't at all. In fact, in a normal country where you've got enlightened principles of fair justice and equal protection and the presumption of innocence, you would see that in this trial, it was riddled with all sorts of problems. One being the limited access to evidence. How often have we talked about this? Thousands and thousands of hours of footage that was not disclosed. They say it was disclosed, but we saw in other J6 cases, like the Jacob Chansley case, we made a full video about that. Chansley's lawyer at Shipwrecked Crew on Twitter filed a motion, said that the DOJ said they disclosed materials. They didn't. That same pattern. Now, Chansley's case is closed and done, and it's coming out after the fact, right? After it's closed and over, we look backwards and we see, oh, there were a lot more problems here. We've already been seeing that in this case. They wanted additional disclosure. They wanted to know who other informants were. No information provided. Talk about protecting civil rights and civil liberties. One of the most sacred places in this country is your attorney's office, where you have protected, privileged conversations with your counsel so you can prepare for your defense unencumbered by the DOJ and the FBI snooping around your office buildings. But that's not what happened here. They had a confidential human source we covered in this trial who went to meet at attorneys' offices with defense counsel. And the judge said, not a big deal, not that big of a deal. And the prosecutor said, well, maybe you shouldn't have invited him over. And the Justice Department says that's okay. We know that there were prosecutors reading attorney-client privileged emails. They said, well, Zachary Rehl waived those privileged claims because he clicked a form in jail. That's it. So do you think that's fair proceedings? Do you think that's fair justice? Do you think it's equal protection of the law? If the government gets to snoop on your emails with your team, that's like the other side looking at the playbook. They get to see everything you're doing. So how can you possibly have a fair shake in America? Merrick Garland would like us to believe that that is not what's happening here. He comes out, he has a 2-minute statement, he reads it like pretty poorly, not even interesting. And he tries to convey to us that this is all legitimate. It is not. Prosecutors reading attorney-client emails, anybody in their right mind would say that's reprehensible. Even lefties. If you said, you know what, if we put a bunch of Antifa people in jail, would you be okay with the Trump DOJ reading their emails? Of course not. Neither would I, by the way. FBI was purging evidence. You remember there was a big disclosure that came from FBI agent Nicole, and she sent in her messages Jenks material that the defense opened up, and they found thousands of hidden rows in the spreadsheet. You're kidding. What did those hidden rows say? Oh, yeah. They were purging evidence just via message. They were just sending messages. Well, just delete that, delete this, delete that, delete this. And it was all legitimate. Your Honor, can we talk about it? Because it was in the same context of our clients who are being charged with seditious conspiracy. Talk about conspiracies. Can we talk about the government's conspiracy? Oh, no, not at all. FBI is legitimate. They're perfectly above board, and we're not going to get into it. Same issue happened about the FBI altering attendees at reports. Apparently, invites and emails were going out, and another FBI agent says, hey, can you go modify that report and delete me from that? I wasn't there, remember? She's like, oh, yeah, I remember. Oh, yeah, you weren't there. So, can we talk about that, Judge? Can we explain any of this to the jury? Can we talk about the government potentially deleting evidence, manipulating evidence? No, you can't. We did have some stipulations that there were at least 8 FBI informants who were involved in the case. We heard that Kenny Lizardo, an FBI informant, picked up Enrique Tarrio from jail the day before the 6th and brought him to different locations. And all of these confidential human sources, weird, none of them told the FBI that there was a pending, imminent seditious conspiracy of any kind. In fact, they all said the opposite. But we couldn't hear a lot of that testimony during the trial. We also heard from the defense that they have counted by their numbers 50 plus confidential human sources embedded on January 6th. 50. Remember, there were only 5 Proud Boys charged with crimes in this case. The FBI had their fingers into 50 people like little puppets running all over the place, and they couldn't stop this from happening. Not only that, they also couldn't disclose the names of those people so that the defense could investigate them and properly repair a rebuttal to this entire scheme. The FBI, the judge said, was the only relevant agency that mattered here. Forget about Homeland Security, forget about Capitol Hill Police or all of the other entities. They're irrelevant. You only get to talk about this very limited subset, because if I open it up, the jurors are going to see this whole thing's a scam. Non-disclosure of Homeland Security agents and many others. The list goes on and on. This is just scratching the surface. We could go back through many days here and assemble an entire list. In fact, maybe we will do that. But that is the joke of our Attorney General trying to promise us all that he is delivering justice in America. There is a list of egregious violations that in any sane country would be considered not justice, would be breaches of equal protection, breaches of due process in disclosure and discovery. You can't prepare a defense if you can't have the evidence. We expect and rely on the government to be fair and to be acting in good faith and to be open and honest with their evidence, and they are not. And so the Proud Boys are going to bear the brunt of this for now. But this is not legitimate. This is not credible. And so what the DOJ is doing is wrecking their own reputation slowly and surely. And the more that we are able to talk about these issues, the more that you share these stories, the more that we see people unpacking these issues, the more it is unbelievable that this is legitimate. He can come out and read his little statement to all of us, but it's not going to last. Time will show, and the truth will eventually come out and be revealed. And the disgusting nefariousness of all of these people involved in this massive scam will be revealed one day, and corrections will be in order. I'm sure of it. But what is the end game? Of course, we'll see. They're coming for Trump. He is next. This was just a pretext to go after the real key figure here, Donald Trump. You remember that back in 2020, there was a presidential debate where he said, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by, and all the things. And they had a conniption fit over that. Julie Kelly is pointing this out, and she makes a great point here. She says the DOJ claimed that the seditious conspiracy plot began on what date? December 19th, 2020. The day that Donald Trump posted this. This is not an accident. He said, go there on January 6th will be wild. Remember that? That's the conspiracy when it started, according to the DOJ. So you juxtapose that with the debate statement. He says in September, stand back and stand by. Then he says in December, after the election's over, right, stand by in case something goes wrong with the election. Election happens, he loses theoretically, and then this goes through, and Trump, after the election, he says, maybe I can win again, right? He says, okay, we're still challenging this. So the election occurs. He says, now I need to activate the Proud Boys, right? I need to go bring them here to go and put pressure on something. This is going to be the story that they concoct. Then he posts this on December 18th. Be there. It will be wild. On January 6th, that's when we're going to challenge the votes. And guess what? The Proud Boys show up. They challenge the votes. A jury convicted him of this. And that was on December 18th. So the DOJ is just setting one bookend of this. And they're going to close the bookend with the conviction of the Proud Boys for seditious conspiracy. They're just connecting the chain. We're following the bouncing ball. And then they're going to turn around and say, that is Donald Trump's scheme. He is the leader of the conspiracy. And they're going to try to charge him with a crime for that. And we'll see what happens there. Remember, other people who have been charged with seditious conspiracy, they didn't get out of custody. You remember that. Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys, has been in jail this entire time. Stuart Rhodes, same story in those guys. Are they going to charge Trump with seditious conspiracy and then hold him in custody without bond like these others? They're working on it. And of course, we will continue to cover. And so I appreciate you following us. I appreciate more than any stories that we share, I ask you to share. This stuff is so important because the more people know that this is not legitimate, the more people that know this is not credible, the better. Because they're going to try to hide behind their press conferences and their media personalities. And all the New York Times and Washington Post are all going to be in hyperventilation mode over this for the foreseeable future. See, look how close we were to the verge of America being lost. No, it's nonsense. These guys, as we heard in the testimony, had a difficult time organizing a pizza party, let alone a seditious conspiracy. But the DOJ is blaming them. They are making them a scapegoat. They are making them a useful piece of a giant political narrative that is just getting started. This is a big part of the keystone that's going to enable them to drive this narrative forward all the way through 2024. The foundation is being laid right now. And so that means we've got to get louder. That means we have to raise the volume level. We have to increase the power level. And we're going to be working on that here. But thank you for sharing this, my friends. Shout out to the Proud Boys attorneys and to the Proud Boys family and to everybody who was involved in this case for all of the amazingly hard work. There's a lot of hurt today. The Proud Boys families are going to be experiencing a lot of pain every time something like this goes off. I know a lot of the lefties out there are doing cartwheels and spiking the football and saying, yeah, this is great. Every time this happens, a bomb goes off, and it is not good for the country for this type of prosecution to be celebrated. It's like throwing people into the Coliseum and cheering when the lions eat them. It's a mob mentality to justice in America. It's disgusting. And we've seen a big pattern of this where the people who are useful in prosecution are prosecuted and the people who are not useful in prosecution are not. They get away with whatever they want. They become useful political operatives of the Democrats. They become useful donors. They go visit Epstein Island and then dump it all back into Democrats. It's corrupt through and through. And it doesn't stop with the DOJ. Just because they call themselves the Department of Justice doesn't mean they are. And when they come out and they try to explain to us that this is just normal operation of America, this is upholding the values of democracy, don't buy it. It's not accurate. That's not how this stuff is supposed to work. And a lot of people who used to be lefties, even on the Supreme Court and in historical legal jurisprudence, would be disgusted, I think, by this verdict and by how this was comported. Of course, we'll continue to cover. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for joining us as we do. All right, my friend. Now let's leave that one behind a little bit. Of course, we're not going to be done. This is all interrelated. But now we're turning our attention over to Donald Trump's trial. He is next. They're going to come and try to indict him too, to just close this whole thing out. But let's get started with the Trump trial because we still have this full day of business to attend to. And so if you want to follow along at home, go to spotlightlawyer.com/Trump because we're going over here now. And you can see this is the mind map. And so if you want to follow along at home, spotlightlawyer.com/Trump is the best place to do it. And so let's get right to it. Trump trial continues day 7. We've got new witnesses as the plaintiff's case, E. Jean Carroll's, comes to a close. There was some new updates related to the billionaire Reid Hoffman, who has a curious relationship with somebody we know well here on this channel called Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein is allegedly dead. Now, we saw that Donald Trump was also visiting Scotland, and he had a statement saying that he might be making his way back to the United States to appear at this trial. We'll see if that happens or not. We've got Carol Martin, we've got Ashley Humphreys as new witnesses, and we've got their histories here. Some of them don't like Donald Trump too much, so we'll investigate that. Of course, as usual, we'll check back in with Inner City Press, who is there on scene in the Southern District of New York. Matthew Russell Lee reporting at innercitypress.com. And so let's get started with the most recent interesting little development, which is the billionaire backer who is supporting the Trump litigation. This guy, Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, worth billions of dollars, has been financing this lawsuit. Now, we were asking ourselves, where was all this money coming from that would be able to fund many lawyers and many expert witnesses for a long period of time just to continue to be a thorn in Trump's side? How did this all happen? And we learned that it was Reid Hoffman. We found that out in a letter that Alina Abba received from Roberta Kaplan, saying that, no, this is not being funded by the law firm. No, there's a billionaire backer who is the person behind the whole thing. And the Wall Street Journal has had several different stories. They got their hands on a trove of documents from Epstein and his calendar and his schedules, and they are telling us that he had a visit with Reid Hoffman some time ago. I clipped a couple things from the story, and we now know that when venture capitalist Reid Hoffman had a flight scheduled to land in New York, Epstein arranged for Hoffman to stay overnight in his townhouse. And we have a full video coming out on this, but Epstein had a lot of questionable things at that Manhattan townhouse. We covered the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and we saw many of those exhibits couldn't even be submitted as exhibits in court. Hoffman was scheduled to attend a breakfast party with Epstein. Hoffman told the Journal he only once visited the island residence. I was only there once. For an MIT fundraising trip, with Mr. Ido. He said he regrets the meeting with Epstein. His last interaction with Epstein was in 2015. Now, this is curious, because a lot of these people are very hysterical when it comes to, women being abused, especially like E. Jean Carroll. I can't believe that Donald Trump, the monster, did what he did to her. Can you believe that? No, I can't. So I care about women. I care about victims of abuse, right? Says Hoffman. That's why he's funding all of this. Well, then why was he hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein in 2015? A notorious and convicted trafficker of minors. If somebody is so interested in bringing Trump to justice to stop his rampant abuse from all over the years, why is he hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein? What? If he's so concerned about women being abused. Isn't that curious? That's really weird to me. I'm not sure. So you see here's a photograph, billionaire Reid Hoffman hanging with Lawrence Summers, former Treasury, and Miss Summers' wife, Harvard professor. And I've always said Harvard is disgusting. This is just more evidence of it. They are flying around. The documents reveal that Epstein had plans for Hoffman to visit his private island. That happened back in March of 2014 and November 2014. He was going to travel with them over from Palm Beach. Hoffman said he was there just meeting with him to generate funds. And all of it happened in 2014 after Epstein was already convicted. So if they're so concerned, if they're so worried about E. Jean Carroll and women being abused, why were they hanging out with Epstein all those years, going to his townhouse and all the things? It's very curious. Now, wouldn't it be nice if this judge allowed us to talk about that stuff so that we could say maybe this whole case is biased? Maybe it's not having anything to do with getting a remedy for E. Jean Carroll. Maybe it has everything to do with people like Reid Hoffman being plugged in with major political players trying to exploit a woman named E. Jean Carroll, who may or may, we don't really know what her deal is. She's a very interesting person, but she is a very useful plaintiff, and they just latched onto her and decided that she would be a useful way to go and attack Donald Trump. Reid Hoffman funded the litigation in cahoots with George Conway, who referred E. Jean Carroll to Roberta Kaplan, her lawyer. So they were just assembling a team. And now we know Reid Hoffman doesn't really, in my opinion, doesn't really have a lot of concern about abusers, right? He might be concerned about Trump, but not about the abuse part of Trump, because he hung out with a convicted abuser named Jeffrey Epstein and was going to stay at his Manhattan house. So that seems like it might be relevant to the jury to know that this might actually be a politically funded operation. But is the judge going to allow that in? No, of course not. Why? Because this judge has not been fair. Trump is calling that out. Speaking from Scotland, Donald Trump says he might make his way back to America to come here and attend this trial so he can respond to E. Jean Carroll himself.
I have to leave Ireland and I have to leave Scotland, where I have great properties. I have to leave early. I don't have to, but I choose to.
Will you attend the trial, Mr. President?
I'll probably attend. It's a disgrace that it's allowed to happen. It's called false accusations against a rich guy, or in my case, against a famous, rich, and political person that's leading the polls by 40 points. And I have to go back for a woman that made a false accusation about me, and I have a judge who's extremely hostile. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to confront this one. This woman is a disgrace, and it shouldn't be allowed to happen in our country. That's totally false. It was fake. She's a fake. She wrote in her book she's a Democrat. We have a rough judge. We have a judge that doesn't like me much, appointed by Bill Clinton. And he's a guy that doesn't like me much. He's, I guess, not allowing the coat that they wanted to put into evidence. Once we said, yes, put it into evidence, they said, oh, we don't want to do that. It's a disgrace, but I have to do it. That's part of life.
Part of life, says Trump. And so we are going to jump into the trial testimony. Our first witness is going to be Carol Martin, who is a friend of E. Jean Carroll, who allegedly received a call. E. Jean Carroll confided in her at some point after the alleged incident. And so, as usual, let's turn our attention over to Matthew Russell Lee. Trump trial resumes day 7. Jury enters the room. We're following courtesy of Inner City Press on Twitter. The judge says, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we left off yesterday while playing Trump's deposition. He says, we're going to just pick up with that right now. And they start playing. Question to Trump during a deposition. Trump, who is in this photo? He says, that's John Johnson. I thought he was good at what he did. Seemed like a nice guy. I don't know. You said, Trump, that you said that Carroll was trying to sell a book. He says, right. Did you know anything about the financial arrangement between Carroll and her publisher? Trump says, I have no idea. Did anyone in your team do research into Miss Carroll? Not that I know. It's possible. The deposition is still playing. They fast forward. Trump says, you know, Carroll, I think she's sick, mentally sick. Didn't she say it was sexy to be attacked? Didn't she tell Anderson Cooper that? By the way, that is not sexy. That's not sexy at all. And you know, Trump is right about that. She did say that to Anderson Cooper. We do have the clip. And since it came up in the trial, why don't we just take a quick listen to it? Because it is, in fact, right here. This is what she said to Anderson.
You don't feel like a victim?
I was not thrown on the ground and ravished.
No.
Which the word rape carries so many sexual connotations. This was not sexual. It hurt.
But I think most people think of rape as it is a violent assault. It is not.
I think most people think of rape as being sexy.
Let's take a short break.
Think of the fantasies.
Yeah, we're wondering about yours.
We're going to take a quick break.
We're wondering about yours. We're wondering why you might come up with your own sexy fantasies.
If you can stick around, we'll talk more on the other side.
You're fascinating to talk to.
Even Anderson's like, this lady's nuts. She's nuts, man. I don't even know. He's like, we're going to cut to commercial. This is just crazy. So that is what Trump was referencing in the trial. The judge says, hey, pause it, everybody. Stop for a minute. We got to back up. We have an audio visual problem. They got their own tubes problems over there. Tell me about it. I can relate. So now the problem's fixed. They hit the thing on the side. It reboots. Video starts playing again. Trump says to Roberta Kaplan, this is the lawyer for Carol. He says, Roberta, he says, you're a political operative too, You're a disgrace. He calls it to her face in the middle of the depot. Trump is sitting there getting questions from Roberta. Hey, yeah, no, I know you got a lot of questions for me. By the way, you're a political operative too. You know that, Roberta? You're a disgrace also. She says, she keeps her composure. Says, you called it a hoax. I take it you're saying Miss Carol fabricated? Question is, Trump, you use hoax a lot. You say that a lot. Can you give us some examples, Trump? He says, yeah, sure. Ukraine, hoax. Lying to the FISA court, hoax. Lying to Congress, hoax. Lying by this scum we have in this country. They spied on my campaign. I could get a whole list of them. He says, this thing's a hoax too. He's right about all of them. Yeah, Ukraine, lying to FISA, lying to Congress, lying to by this scum we have all over this country. They spied on my campaign. I get a whole list of them. You want a list of them? I'll give them to you, Roberta. Did you also refer to the use of mail-in ballots as a hoax? He says, yeah, I do. Not anymore, I don't think he does. Now I think he thinks that they're very useful now. But remember, this deposition is from some time ago. So he said, don't use them. Now I think he's on the mail-in ballot train now. And that's just appropriate. Did you refer to mail-in ballots as a hoax? Yeah. Do you vote by mail? He says, yeah, I do. But I have no idea what happened to it afterwards. I sent it in there. It went somewhere. Now they play in the depot, they play the Access Hollywood tape for Trump. Now in the video, it says, now she's got the big phony tease. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. You just grab them by the purses. Always good. You don't fall out of the bus. Remember Gerald Ford, Billy Bush? They play the video. They say, hey, Trump, you said you can grab him by the purse? He says, well, historically, it's been true. If you look back, look at the stars. Are you familiar with Natasha Stoynoff, Trump? No. She wrote about you at People magazine. Oh, yeah. She said I was aggressive. Yeah, she wrote a nice story about me and then came up with this phony charge. He says, all right, let me show you a video. In the video, Trump says, the story about Melania and I, our first anniversary, now 12 years later, she says I made inappropriate advances. Wasn't that part of the story? The depot continues. Roberta Kaplan asks Trump, what do you mean by, quote, would not be my first choice? Trump says to Roberta, well, you wouldn't be my first choice either there, Roberta. I hope you're not insulted. That's what I meant by it. I sort of meant, well, let me give you an example. You also would not be my first choice. Hope you're not insulted. And speaking of that, there is an interesting clip here from Trump. I think we played this yesterday. Do we have it? All right. Well, I thought we had it. I don't know where it is. We'll continue. Now, the depot is over. So they go back to questions. Judge Kaplan says, okay, next witness. Plaintiff's attorney comes in and says, Your Honor, we call Frances Carol Martin. And Frances Carol Martin is this woman here on day 7. Used to be a journalist. I'm not sure what her current status is, but she's a friend of E. Jean Carroll, and allegedly she got the phone call. Carroll was confiding in her after the incident occurred. Says, Miss Martin, can you tell us your full name? She says, yeah, my name is Frances Carol Martin. And how long have you known Miss Carroll? Oh gosh, 30 years. When did America's Talking broadcast? She said, what are you doing? I'm a journalist. And were you on TV? Yeah. What show were you on? I was on America's Talking broadcast. Okay. And when did that air? Oh, she says that came from July 4th, 1994 to July 4th, 1996. Did that one out of Fort Lee, New Jersey. And that's where you worked then? She says, yeah. Was Roger Ailes involved in this? She says, yes. What'd you do next? Well, after that show, I went and I did the People's Court. I did that with Ed Cuck. And you did a bunch of work. And did you do anything with E. Jean Carroll at that time? She says, yeah, what I call aging woman things. Lots of lunches, you know, comedy clubs, things we like to do. Miss Martin, did Miss Carroll tell you about Bergdorf Goodman, this store that you were in? She says, yeah. We went from the studio to my house. And she told me. Counsel says, did you think? She says, I think something, and I'm not exactly sure what. Well, what did Miss Carroll say to you? She came and she told me Trump attacked me. Did you know who she meant? She said, yeah, there's only one Donald Trump that I knew. The only one that's part of the landscape. Miss Martin, when E. Jean called you, was she crying? No, but she was upset. She seemed a little bit frenzied. Did you touch E. Jean? We hugged. It was disconcerting when we hugged. Did E. Jean tell you what she planned to do? Miss Martin says, she said she'd called Lisa Birnbaum, who we heard from earlier in the trial, and said, go to the police. But I told her, I said, hold on a minute. Donald Trump has a lot of attorneys and he would bury you. And then when she told me she was dedicating the book to me and Lisa for keeping the covenant, she said, and Tacopina chimes in, he says, Your Honor, I have to object. Judge, of course, overrules it. No, what are you, nuts? Overruled. So Roberta Kaplan, E. Jean's lawyer, continues. It said, does Miss Carroll give you a draft? Yeah, she did. It was at that dinner at an Upper West Side. Also with Lisa was there, and her husband came along, Michael. And E. Jean brought 11 pages of a draft and shared it with us. Oh, that's nice. Did you discuss it? No, I didn't read it right away. Because we're at dinner, you know, I didn't read it right there in front of everybody. Did you plan to come forward? No. It was 2019. I was worried about the climate of the country, security, and so were members of my family. But then you later agreed to be identified? She said yes. On the New York Times, The Daily Podcast. So she's scared for all of these years, freaked out, and then shows up on the New York Times podcast. Got it. Are you still concerned about security? Yeah. Do you like Donald Trump? Not particularly. My worldview is very different, and some in his party. But are you testifying here, Miss Martin, because of your political views? No. Did you have to give a deposition in this case? Yes. Is this your email? The judge chimes in and says, you may want to change it. Which is a weird thing. This judge is being very strange. Inner City Press notes, so far, virtually none of the exhibits shown to the jury are available to the public. So the judge is like, well, everybody's going to see your email now. And Inner City's like, nobody sees it. We can't see anything right now. So the judge is just continuing to interject in this trial. And it's so strange. And it's almost vouching. He's validating her concerns. And he does it to support the plaintiff's case. Right now, we have E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, examining Miss Martin. She's concerned about attacks, my family, security. And now, as part of this trial, they got to put her email up on the screen, and the judge says, you might want to change it in case you get attacked again. He's vouching, he's validating all of her concerns. These are subtle, little subliminal things, but every one of these adds up to the jury. If throughout the 6-7 days of trial, the jury is watching the judge every day support the plaintiff and castigate the defense, it adds up, especially if you don't notice these things. It's even body language, right? Think about how much communication is not actually communication. And think about this judge huffing and scoffing all the time for the defense and then supporting the plaintiff like, oh, that's from a book, isn't it? Oh, brilliant. Love that. Great answer. The email, Inner City Press, has seen the address, is about Nambia. Martin says, I thought he should have known better. Lawyer says, now you said to Miss Carroll that when better, you and she should scheme. Scheme. Wow. What was that about? She says, well, there were health concerns. That's what we were talking about. Ms. Martin, why are you here today to testify? I'm here to recount what my friend told me in 1996. I believed it then and I believe it now. Tacopina objects. Your Honor, that's inappropriate. It should be stricken. The judge says, I agree. I'll strike it. And let's go on a break. Now, there were no further questions. And we come back. It says, I understand the media wants to access exhibits. The answer is no. Jury comes back in. Cross-examination is about to begin. Judge says, Mr. Tacopina, floor is yours. Ms. Martin, you have donated about, 10 times to liberals? Is that true? Yes, but they were small donations. And you turned over some of your texts and your emails in your discovery. Is that true? Yeah. All right, I want to discuss a few items with you. We'll just go one by one. The exhibits come out. They start looking at them. Tacopina says, I want to show you these exhibits. And the judge cuts him off. Says, hey, Joe, why don't you just ask if she has said these things? So the judge literally is interjecting again, right in his cross-examination, to stop him. You don't get to do it this way, do it my way. Which is interfering in the middle of his performance. So he's got a whole plan, right? You've got a whole plan when you're going to come out there and go through your notes. Don't do it your way, do it my way. It's very jarring, very rattling. He's got to change his whole structure now. He says, I want to ask Ms. Martin, did you say this man is spreading his stank all over the place? Did you say that? Spreading his stank? She says, yeah, that sounds like me. And here you're writing about Ivanka Trump at a G20 meeting, and you say, how can they sit there and quote Charles Blow's tweets? Did you say that? She says, yeah, that's how I felt. And you called them the two junior grifters. You said they're the two junior grifters. Who are they? I was referring to Ivanka and Jared. He says, Miss Martin, now what is a scheme? What is a scheme? Or what are we familiar with here? Are you familiar? She says, to put together a plan. Is it a secret? Not necessarily. This was right after the election of Trump. This was a typical conversation. Talking about scheming against Trump. Huh, typical. Tacopina goes, okay, Miss Carroll. And again, this is confusing. A lot of these people have the same names. Roberta Kaplan is the lawyer. Judge Kaplan is the judge. We've got E. Jean Carroll. This is Carol Martin. So Miss Martin, Miss Carroll said, I have something special for you. Do you know what that was? I think she was referring to the stuffed squirrel she gave as a gift. What did you think of that? She says, I don't know. Well, I want to go back to your deposition, and there's an objection from Roberta. says, during this time that we're talking about, Miss Martin, you were married to somebody called Joseph Perry? Yeah. And no one else was in the house at the time? No, they were not. And Miss Carroll said that she felt physically okay when she came over. Is that right? She says, maybe in so many words. I don't know. He says, well, reading from the deposition, you told us that she said she felt okay. So you told her, and the judge cuts him off again. Please get to the question. And Tacopina says, I'm setting it up, Judge. He says, questions, not setting it up. We're not setting up a restaurant in here. Tacopina says, okay, I guess I'll forget that question. And at this point, I think Tacopina is doing this. He's not even fighting. Okay, he's just going to appeal this. He's going to appeal every time this happens. He's just going to appeal it. So he's like, all right, not even going to fight you on that. I wanted to ask a question about this very important topic, about the deposition and about Carol feeling okay. And the judge won't let me even ask about it. I'll get to the next question, Judge, and we'll just take it up on appeal. So Tacopina asks another question. And he then says, sorry, that's argumentative. And he reads a definition from Black's Law Dictionary. And he says, you can't say that in my courtroom. Sorry. Tacopina says, okay, I guess I'll move on. So then you communicated with another lawyer, Miss Martin. Is that true? Somebody called Noah Bialy. Is that true? She said, yeah, I did. I was told that I needed a lawyer. And you also wrote, you said no more texts in your messages until further notice. You put that in your notes, right? Why'd you put that in there? He says, I'm not sure what I meant by that, but I was told someone would be coming to subpoena me for this case. Is that it? She says, is that it? Is that what you wanted to say? She says, yes, that's what I wanted to say. Now, I want to show you defense exhibit called ER. It says here, you told a friend that Miss Carroll intended to sue Trump for attacking her and that it's gone to another level. And that for Miss Carroll, this quest has become a lifestyle. Did you write that there? Yes, I did. What did you mean by that? She says, I know what I meant. Well, what did you mean? She said, I was being hyperbolic. She says, lifestyle is a word I just use, you know. I just say it a lot. Okay. So, E. Jean Carroll, you say this quest has become a lifestyle, right? She gets accolades. She gets litigation funded. There's people driving her around in cars, opening doors for her. There are people outside the courtrooms. We love you, Jean. We believe E. Jean Carroll. It's all this big party for these people. I was being hyperbolic. I just like that word. Tacopina says, I'm going to show you a text that you sent to your daughter in which you're venting. Says, I'm not sure I'm seeing the right one. You said here in this message, you said, Miss Carroll was loving the adulation. Did you say that? Yes. You wrote, in too deep. I'm just not there for it. Is that right? You're in too deep. I'm just not there for it. The judge says, hey, Joe, how much longer is this going to take? These are great questions. I hate them. Are you almost done yet? How much longer, Mr. Tacopina? He says, 10 minutes, Judge. I'll finish after lunch. He says, you're telling the jurors then. He says, all right, we're going to lunch now then. So we go to the lunch break. And we go to lunch. And we fast forward. We're checking back in with Inner City Press reporting. Judge Kaplan is responding to his motion. He filed a motion to get the exhibits. And there, so I told you, go follow Inner City Press to get another layer of analysis here. He's filing motions for exhibits and the judge is going to hear them. Super great and cool. Tacopina says, all right, he says, Miss Martin, when you were meeting with like-minded people around the 2016 election, you never brought up that your friend told you she had been attacked by Trump? You never told anybody about this in 2016? No. Thank you very much for your time. Nothing further. Redirect. So Roberta Kaplan comes back out, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, trying to rehabilitate this witness. Ms. Martin, do you recall giving this testimony at your deposition, page 65, when you were venting to your daughter? Did you doubt E. Jean's story? She says, no, there's no reason to doubt it. Do you recall that? I do. Would you lie to stop the Trump train in this trial? Would you perjure yourself? No, of course not. Nothing further, Your Honor. Defense recross. Miss Martin, would you have said these things to Miss Carroll's face? That she lives a lifestyle and that she's doing this for adulation? Martin says, yes, I think I would. No further questions. Judge says, thank you, Ms. Martin. You're excused. Plaintiff, next witness. Your Honor, we call Professor Ashley Humphreys of Northwestern. This is Ashley Humphreys, professor at Northwestern University, cultural sociology. If you want to learn a little bit more about her, you can go to her website, short bio from her. She is a sociologist who examines core topics in consumer behavior and marketing. We're going to be talking about social media. She's the author of a book called Enduring Principles of Social Media. She went to Northwestern, or is at Northwestern, at the School of Journalism. Since her work on legitimacy, she works on sustainability as a cultural discourse. Wow, this is a fancy, listen to this. Since her work on legitimacy, Humphreys has applied the institutional theory approach to study sustainability as a cultural discourse and a set of institutional practices. Does anybody know what the hell that means? I have no idea what that means. I have no idea. Since her work on legitimacy, she's applied institutional theory approach to study sustainability as a cultural discourse and a set of institutional practices. I have no idea what that says, what that means. I have no idea what that means. Literally, I have no idea. All right. I don't think she does either. All right. So anyways, that who is testifying. And she wrote this book called Enduring Principles on social media enduring principles. Now, something happened here that is very important to note before we listen to her testimony. As we've long suspected, most of the people in this case are rabid anti-Trumpers, TDSers to the maximum degree. And Ashley Humphreys is no different. Oh, don't you hate when this surprise pops out of nowhere? Here is what we found when we did a nice little search. Some time ago, Business Professors of America.com. If you go to businessprofessorsofamerica.com, this is still up. They say, it's time for business leaders to speak out against the threat that Trump poses to our republic. Oh, no. Open letter and a call to action signed by 1,000+ business school professors from across America. Trump is a threat to our republic. Polarization in America is at record highs. And now we, prominent citizens representing a wide range of institutions, are speaking out about an existential threat to our republic. Veterans and generals and politicians and everybody have come out against the president, who denigrates science, incites violence, and all the things, okay? The hystericism on this is just nuts. But these, it's just like they love to sign letters, okay? That's basically the purpose for their existence. Others in society want to build businesses and build families and create relationships and be of service to their fellow man and women. And many Democrats, they just wake up looking for letters to sign. There was the 51 idiots who signed the intelligence so-called operation. Now there's 1,000 people. That's a lot of work to coordinate 1,000 people, to vet 1,000 people. Look at this. And they wrote this giant letter. Now, you can read the whole thing if you'd like. The point of this is all we've got to do is just go right here. And you can see, look whose name is right on the list, right there. Ashley Humphreys, Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University. You're kidding me! She doesn't like Trump? Whoa! And she's testifying in this trial? I'm sure she's fair and impartial. Let's go back over to the testimony and see how this unfolds. It is Ashley Humphreys from Northwestern. Oh, thanks for being here, Miss Humphreys. What's your PhD in? She says, oh, it's in cultural sociology and marketing. Now, Professor Humphreys, are you being paid for this testimony? She says, yeah. I got $500 to prepare and $850 for testimony. Now that's per hour, right? She says yes. Now I want to go to the deck here, and they publish a deck on the screen, a slide deck. How many followers does Donald Trump have on Truth Social, since she's a social media expert? 4.7 million, she says. And how did you measure how his statements injured Miss Carroll? She says, great question. Let me explain. I'm an expert. Says, I considered a bunch of articles and I analyzed the threats. And how many articles did you consider here, Miss Humphreys? Well, of the 60 in the complaint by Miss Carroll against Trump, I chose 17. And remember, we have to talk about damages in this case. This is not a criminal trial where Trump goes to jail. This is about money and about media and about stopping him with a useful narrative that he's an attacker. So in the complaint, they listed 60 different stories that were damaging to E. Jean Carroll. And they've got to quantify this so that they can ask for money. Of the 60 stories that we listed, I looked at 17 of them. What websites did you look at? I looked at the Huffington Post, the Washington Post. I looked at ABC. And then I went through and I made a spreadsheet and I figured out how many people visit each by page views. Wow, very complicated. And why did you only consider Twitter and Truth Social? She says, well, Twitter is very transparent and I considered 13 tweets. And remember, not all of your followers see all of your tweets. And some are bots. And so I took those out, about 12% of the followers. And she says, Truth Social is basically similar to Twitter, but it hasn't been studied as much. And you don't have transparently, you don't have retweet and retruth information like you do on Twitter. So I figured about the same percentages. The statement, it was only on MSNBC and only on Fox. There were about 7 million impressions total. I calculated it all. It says, I also studied portrayals of Miss Carroll before the Trump stories. Portrayals. She was considered a sassy advice columnist and relationships. Then words like layer, etc. came in to be used. And so what I did to assess damages is I just calculated how much it would cost to run counter messages on cable. On cable TV, there are rates also for influencers and micro influences. It's called reputational repair with corrective messaging. And so how much would that cost if E.G. needed to repair her relationship, her reputation? On TV, it would cost $133,000. What about on all of the platforms if you just added it all together? Total amount, $2.7 million. Thank you. Wow, that's a lot. No further questions. The judge says, perfect. We're going to take our 15-minute break, and we're back. Now they come back. Roberta says, hey, Your Honor, before we bring the jury back, I want to introduce an evidentiary issue. We want to bring in a paragraph from Trump's book. He wrote a book called Think Like a Billionaire. And judge says, well, what's the problem, Mr. Tacopina? Why can't we bring that in? He says, well, there was a co-author. He says, well, we'll deal with that later. Bring in the jury. All right, cross-examination now. Trump's lawyer is up. He says, okay, Professor Ashley, you were paid to study the impact of Trump's statements. Is that right? The judge says, can we avoid the obvious here? Again, we don't get any of that for the plaintiff. Can we avoid the obvious? Trump's lawyer says, is there harm from false accusations of attacks? Roberta, objection. Judge sustains it. Next question. Did you study Miss Carroll's appearances on podcasts? No. Is it fair to say that those on Truth Social mostly support Trump? He says, yeah, that's likely true. And you didn't consider positive statements about Miss Carroll? She says, I saw them, but they didn't require correction. Did you consider Miss Carroll's book and the excerpt in The Cut? Objection, asked and answered. Judge says, yep, sustained, move on. So Brandt sits back down. Okay, guess I don't have any other questions. No further questions, and sits down. Now, we get another witness. This one is called Roberta Myers. The judge says to the jurors, hey, we may go past 4:30. Any problem, raise your hands. Nope, nobody raises their hands. They call the next witness. Her name is Roberta Myers. She is a former Elle editor. And I did not have a photo of her because I don't think she was up yet. before we started the show, but it looks like she's a Trump columnist. And I think this is what she looks like. Yes, former editor-in-chief of the magazine. Here is a photograph. Trump, this is Roberta Myers, former editor-in-chief of Elle magazine. So we'll get her added to the mind map here very shortly. But that is who is up on the stand. Miss Roberta, when were you an editor? She says, back from 1993 to 1995. I also worked for NBC and 17 at the time. And how did you come to know Miss Carroll? Oh, we worked together. Have you ever met the defendant, Donald Trump? Yeah, I was on an episode of The Apprentice. Did you support Donald Trump for president in 2016 or 2020? No, I'm a Democrat. No further questions. Trump's lawyer comes up. Miss Roberta, how did you leave Elle? Not voluntarily. That's it. No redirect. The judge says, okay, well, I'm assuming there's no more witnesses. Let me see counsel at sidebar then. Counsel comes up. Judge returns and says, I am ruling, quote, in the event Mr. Trump, whatever reason, testifies in this case, could he get back from the UK by Monday before closing arguments? He seemed to say he might. We don't know. The jury comes back in. Any other evidence by the plaintiff? Roberta Kaplan says, yes, Your Honor, we have a stipulation. It says that plaintiff E. Jean Carroll produced diaries, including entries that she was distraught by political developments, a death, and that she hit her back. So that means this is a written document that is evidence that the jury can see, that is agreed upon by the defense and the plaintiff. E. Jean Carroll produced diaries. She was distraught by political developments, a death, and she hit her back. And with that, Your Honor, E. Jean Carroll rests. They're done. The judge says, okay, well, we will almost certainly reconvene Monday at 10, but we need contact information on how to let you know if things change. Says you each call in after 10 p.m. on Sunday. He's explaining this to the jury. Call in until you hear different. You're back here at 10 a.m. on Monday. But if you call in on Sunday night and it says you're not needed, don't come in. Understand? Anybody not? Great. You're done. Have a great weekend. Thank you. Now, lawyers, do we have any motions here? And Tacopina says, yeah, Your Honor, we move for a judgment as a matter of law. This is like a motion for a judgment of acquittal, right? After the plaintiff or the prosecutor rests, you just say, oh, they haven't presented any evidence. They haven't presented anything. I don't even have to show a defense because their case was so crap. So we move for a judgment as a matter of law. Judge says, denied, obviously. And he says, so we rest our case. So Mr. Trump, says the judge, waives his right to testify. Tacopina says he does. Judge says, how recently have you spoken to him, by the way? He says, a few minutes before I came into court this morning. The judge says, well, I'm committed to allowing parties to make their case. I will allow Mr. Trump up till 10 p.m. Sunday to make a motion to testify. I'm not saying I'll grant it, but I'll consider it and we'll see what happens. 10 p.m. Sunday, that's it. Tacopina says I could do 10 a.m. Sunday. He says, let's do 5 p.m. Sunday. There have been news reports out there in the British Isles attributed to Mr. Trump about his possible testifying here, which we played earlier. So I've taken precautions. Now, if Trump changes his mind, if he does want to come back in and testify, have him file a motion by Sunday. And just for those of you joining us, this is what Trump said recently.
I have to leave Ireland and I have to leave Scotland, where I have great properties. I have to leave early. I don't have to, but I choose to.
Will you attend the trial, Mr. President?
I'll probably attend. It's a disgrace that it's allowed to happen. It's called false accusations against a rich guy or in my case, against a famous, rich, and political person that's leading the polls by 40 points. And I have to go back for a woman that made a false accusation about me, and I have a judge who's extremely hostile. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to confront this one. This woman is a disgrace, and it shouldn't be allowed to happen in our country. That's totally false. It was fake. She's a fake. She wrote in her book she's a Democrat. We have a rough judge. We have a judge that doesn't like me much, appointed by Bill Clinton. And he's a guy that doesn't like me much. He's, I guess, not allowing the coat that they wanted to put into evidence. Once we said, yes, put it into evidence, they said, oh, we don't want to do that. It's a disgrace, but I have to do it. That's part of life.
Part of life, indeed. So Trump is afforded the opportunity to testify if he so chooses. The judge has said taken precautions on this. So how much time do you expect you need for closing arguments? Tacopina, Trump's lawyer, says, I think about 2 hours for each side. E. Jean's lawyer says, we need 2 hours and 45 minutes. And so the judge says, okay, so 2 hours then? She says, I'm negotiating against myself, but 2.5 would be okay. The judge says, let me get out my slide rule. I don't want to show my age or anything. So Tacopina says, how about this, Your Honor? Plaintiff can go from 10 to noon. The defense can go from 1 to 3:30. Says that would work unless we have a media event outside. They start laughing. Now, Ed Sheeran's gone. Apparently, he had a trial right around the corner. He won. Judge Kaplan says, who won that trial? Tacopina says, Ed Sheeran. He says, all right, well, as to the media request, if the email addresses are taken out, we've got no problem. Says, I want the media to understand. Either do I, as long as email's out, I mean addresses, but my whole staff is here, so work it out. Tacopina says, okay, well, what about the charging conference, Your Honor? When are we doing that? He says, I am to know if I'm calling off the jury at 10 a.m. Monday. Well, why would you? Well, if there's a motion made, you say you don't want, and I believe in your hearts of hearts you don't, but he said, so Tacopina says, okay, so we'll do the draft at 8 a.m. on Monday. We come in at 9 a.m. And then the jury will be here. We'll do closings at 10 and then with the plaintiff. And then we'll be back with the defense at 1:30. Judge says, okay, we're done. Have a good weekend. And the jury is already gone. Now the attorneys leave. And that is it on the day. We have the end of Trump trial, day 7. We covered some good ground here. We knew and learned more about Reid Hoffman, the billionaire who visited Jeffrey Epstein's island, who is funding this entire case. Trump is contemplating coming back at some point. Carol Martin is E. Jean Carroll's friend who testified briefly today. Ashley Humphreys signed a letter with 999 other weirdos challenging Donald Trump, saying he's a threat to our republic. And then she came in and testified as though she's objective. And we got great updates from the trial, courtesy of our friend at Inner City Press. And you can go subscribe to his Substack at MatthewRussellLee.substack.com. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. And we now want to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this over from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Some of those very generous super chats on YouTube. Let's say hello to Rumble. Let's say hello to Twitter. And then we'll debrief for our members only after party here in a short bit. So first up over on YouTube, and thank you everybody for sending in some lovely super chats today. First one came in from Tony Hay Munkets. Says this is complete BS. They did nothing to BLM, to be BLM or Antifa. They were burning down cities. Nothing to them for breaking windows at the Capitol, which I've seen live on Right Side Broadcasting, GBPB. Something, something, Proud Boys. Says this is complete. Yeah, it's not unexpected. Remember, this is DC. This is the insurrection. This is the judge we've been paying attention to. We've seen all of the rulings, but it still hurts, no doubt. And the double standards, the 2 tiers of justice, I think have never been more on display than they are today. A Bad Poet says, it seems to me the only seditious conspiracy was committed by the FBI, the DOJ, and Nancy Pelosi. Pretty sure they've destroyed the official documents and talked about it. Yeah, there are all sorts of things that we would love to know more about. And the question is, are we ever going to get access to the data? I don't know. We heard that Kevin McCarthy was going to release it to Tucker. I'm still waiting for those files to be dropped any day now, but not going to hold my breath. Thank you for the super chat, A Bad Poet. P-Dubs says, P-Dub Designs says, tie a yellow ribbon. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? It says, tie something around an oak tree. Is this an old song? Yeah, the yellow ribbon round the old oak tree is a song about a man asking for forgiveness from his love and for her to show that she is forgiving him by tying a yellow ribbon around an old oak tree. Interesting connection there from P-Dub. Tie a yellow ribbon around that old oak tree until hostages set free. Yeah, this is actually over on Wikipedia. I've not heard of this. So this is a phrase. Is a single reach the top 10? I guess it's a song. Oh, yeah, 1973. That's probably why. Yeah, that's probably why I had no idea what it was. Okay, so that makes sense. But thank you for the super chat, and I'm glad we looked that up. That's interesting. I'll have to listen to that. All right, and so those came in from our amazing friends on YouTube. We also had one from Tony Hay. Says, I appreciate your knowledge, but how do we stop the lies? Proud Boys don't deserve this. There was hundreds of thousands of there. There was no insurrection. I'm sure Nancy and the rest of the Democrats were hoping for more. Honestly, Tony, hey, we gotta, wake more people up to these issues, I think is the answer. And look, there's a long game going right now. This is a long arc of history. I'm talking years. And, the pendulum swings in this country. And right now it's in a troubled time, right? There are going to be consequences for this. And I don't mean violent consequences or anything, revolutionary. I just mean that the institutions that think that they can function this way don't, right? It would be like a McDonald's trying to run as a McDonald's that didn't make French fries or hamburgers. A justice system is supposed to produce justice. And as more and more people wake up and realize that these institutions aren't delivering the things they're promising to deliver, they're going to lose their power. And as they lose the power, I think of them as the jailers. As our jailers fail because they're bringing this problem upon themselves, these are losses for them. They feel like victories for them, but these are losses for justice. And an institution that supposedly cares about justice, it is a loss for them. And eventually that will be revealed. This will come out and be seen. But it's hard to see that right now. Right now, they're like a bunch of drunken frat boys, They're out there celebrating. They're like the Proud Boys, having a good time, not insurrecting anything. They're out there partying and enjoying it, and it feels bad. But they're not going to be long for it. A system that is built on injustice cannot last forever. And so they might be feeling like they're on top of the world right now, but they're wrecking their own systems. And as they wreck their systems, we become more free. And they didn't even get a full victory here. This should have been a clean sweep. Dominic Pezzola was not even convicted of this. So there are people charged who have been acquitted. And I really am going to enjoy that talking point. I'm going to say Dominic Pezzola has been acquitted for seditious conspiracy because he was. And he testified. And the jury still didn't buy it. In the worst jurisdiction in this whole country, after years of a never-ending onslaught of insurrection fever throughout the entire city of DC. So more and more people, I think as they see this operation, how many more people are recognizing that our justice system is just not really about justice anymore? I feel like those numbers are changing dramatically. And January 6th is going to be their downfall. What they think is going to puff them up and legitimize their institutions is going to be their own downfall. Unfortunately now, in the middle of this, there is a lot of collateral damage. There's Proud Boys and there's many other J6ers who have been abused and scapegoated on the back of a political narrative that's being driven by the Democrats. And so, yeah, they'll be looked at as martyrs, and there will be a a time of processing and mourning and of recovery. And I think eventually the truth will prevail because these people are all part of a corrupt operation. And the corrupt operations, they start to spring leaks, and there will be consequences for this. There are consequences for everything that we do. This is one of them. They think it's a victory. It's not. Fred Pedamonte is here. He said, these ashholes were trying RICO on the Proud Boys. Pezzola's testimony is what helped him with count 1, I believe. FBI, DHS, ATF have to go. Trump 2024 from Johnny, which is Fred Pedamonte's really good boy, which is a great comment. FBI, DHS, ATF have to go. That's true. Yeah, and Fred Pedamonte's dog is very involved in all sorts of interesting activities. And so that's a great comment from him. All right, let's do a refresh. And thank you, Fred. Hopefully you guys are doing well over there. We had another one come in from P-Dubs. And thank you, P-Dubs, for this. Says, that was the national song we did until hostages came home from Iran. Actually tied yellow ribbons around trees as a sign of solidarity with our hostages. Reagan won and hostages came home. Gen X, Dawn 1970. Super cool, P-Dub. Yeah, I had no idea what that was. So when you said yellow ribbons, I was thinking about the Proud Boys because they have a lot of yellow in their logos. And so that was where my first thought went. But yeah, and I'm really, really bad with anything popular culture. I hate that category in all the games. I hate it. It's the worst. You draw the pop culture card. You're like, I'm losing whatever this question is. That's guaranteed. I'm losing it. We have this one from Melanie. Thank you, Melanie. Says, thank you for all you do. I enjoy listening to you. Thank you, Melanie. Melanie S. in the house. Very generous. Thank you, Melanie. I appreciate you being here. I'm glad that we get to join in together on this journey because it would be maddening to go it alone. And so thank you to everybody on YouTube for those very, very generous super chats. I appreciate all of you. I want to say shout out to our friends on Rumble and see who is chatting away over there. We've got, who's in the house? We got Sedona Rocks, I see. Good to see you, Sedona. We got Chappaquiddick Drinkers over there. We have La Azteca. He says, Rob. He says, Rob. Jan X over there says, great show. T-Tone says, I saw a great tweet. Lil Galaxy's there. Mr. Bigfoot. We are under siege. Says, I email my congressman. I email Jim Jordan. Good ideas. I think we got to turn up the power level a little bit. We got to get, a little bit more involved and, bring somebody into the game with us. Otherwise, it will be more of the same. So thank you to our friends on Rumble. We had some very nice tips come in from our friends on Locals. Let's say hello to our friends on Locals. Very generous tips. From G-Gum. Oh, G-Gum, our meme smith extraordinaire. She's got a night. Here's what G-Gum got for us today. This is basically how I felt all day today on the show. This is just perfect. And who do we have? Let's see this image. All right, this is me today. I'm sure this is many of you as well. That's pretty dang good graphics, no? I mean, it's a high volume of anger. I think we're all feeling a little bit of that. Thank you for that, Jigam. Indoctrination says these rulings are amazing and on the anniversary of the Haymarket riots. They convicted anarchists without any evidence or proof that they were even there. From Indoctrination. I'm not familiar with that either. And Common Free says, Rob, you must pick one. A.G. Garland as the Garland the AG or Garland the Supreme Court Justice. Which one? That's a great question from Common Free. The only reason I would pick Garland as the AG is because it's temporary. It's limited in time. Garland the Supreme Court Justice, that's a life appointment, man. That's scary. But after a couple of years, he can only do so much damage here. And then he'll be done. But okay, so that, my friends, was it over on Locals. And shout out to Jigam Gigam for our meme of the day. I know many of us are feeling this way. Appreciate that one. We'll keep that one in handy because there will be more of these to come, no doubt about it. And let's say hello to Twitter and see who is over there. Before we wrap up, we're going to go to our members only after party where we're going to debrief and talk about a little bit more stuff here. So if you're a member, get ready to come and join us. Let's say hello to Twitter. And we got 9 people watching on Twitter. Woo! Hey, Danny says nothing's going to happen to the judge, even though we got some problems with the judge, says Danny. Abby says, since Tarrio was charged with seditious conspiracy, he was able to be charged with all of the other things. Yes. Yeah, because he was part of the conspiracy. All of that conduct, it's like a hula hoop. You just throw it over everybody. That's why they were also trying to charge them with the same crimes as Dominic Pezzola for stealing the shield. But they separated Pezzola out and then attributed his conduct only to him and the other conduct to the conspirators. Donna's here, says, I wonder how many of the jurors feel bad after they're released and find out how much legit info was not purposely released to them. Will they feel used once they actually see the truth? I would feel disgusted. Will they say anything about it? Don't know. Sean says, you, Robert, are a rock star from the very interesting point of view. Thank you for the input here on Twitter and on YouTube. It's good to see you, Sean. Fleesum is here from England. Says anyone could be convicted of a conspiracy. So when we wrote the First Amendment, it was to stop jailing anyone for complaints. And Robert says, notice each step of the Democrats move the communist conversion of America as planned. Yes, they're in the midst of that, seizing the institutions and gobbling up power and control. But that, my friends, was it for us. Very, very grateful to everybody who contributed to our efforts here. And we had, let's see here, who else do we have? We had a couple others, I think. Yes, we do. Oh my goodness. So shout out to, let's see who else we have over here. On Rumble, it looks like we had my goodness, we had so much activity today. I'm discombobulated. All right, Michael Swade is here. He says the Proud Boys jury found them guilty of sedition, but innocent of assault. How does one overthrow a government by means of force without committing an act of assault? Yeah, it's a good question, Michael Swade. And I think that there was that one of those assaults was for the water bottles. So there was other assaults that they got convicted for, but the one was the water bottle assault. That's because they ascribed that one over to Pezzola. But it's a great question. There's a lot of questions here. Jappaquiddick says, now that we're down to just the Crazy Lady trial, to look back at the Proud Boys trial, would you consider an interview with Kyle Seraphin for his thoughts on the FBI? Fascinating inside expert. I absolutely would, actually. Yeah, I follow Kyle Seraphin. He's an ex-FBI whistleblower who has been in a lot of trouble with the FBI. They're not happy with that he's speaking out. I think he's publishing a book. It's coming out soon, I think. I have not gotten it yet. Dolphin fan in the house. Thank you, Dolphin, for inviting 5 new people to come and join us. And hey, if you joined us as a member on YouTube, don't forget to grab the Telegram link because we are going over there in just a few minutes. Tammy, welcome. Mary, Spencer, Mork, and Heather all joining us as members on YouTube. And thank you very much, Dolphin fan. We got a lot of people now joining us in our morning streams. And yeah, indoctrination. Hey, we also had Just Dawn. Thank you, Just Dawn. Just Dawn invited 10 people. The Soulless Ginger's here. Magoose, Jay Liebgott, Brian, Velany, Jonna, Chase, Gregory, Tails, Kara, and Son of Liberty, all joining us courtesy of Just Dawn. Soulless Ginger. Thank you, Just Dawn. It's going to be lit tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of people chatting away. And we had Michael Swade, Dolphin fan, I think gifted no, we got those. Steel Stargazer is here. What's up, Steel? Thank you, Steel. Says, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't understand these trials. My ultimate thanks. Well, thank you, Steele. And thank you for sending that in. And thank you for joining us. I really have a lot of fun spending time with you guys here, covering these things. I think it's extremely important. And I'm grateful for the time that we have together. So we had, the other one was from Calm and Free. And I think that about does it for us, my friends. And boy, we covered a lot of ground today. And Karen Vaughn is saying, what does a membership give a person? So if you're on YouTube, my understanding is if you're on YouTube, I think you have to like click a button to be able to accept the membership gifts. But if you become a member, we do morning streams. So it's a members only live stream where it's a much smaller, more intimate community. And we chat through the stories. I'll also record usually a story or two. So like I'll pull up a story or two, sometimes 3, and we'll cover other things that we can't get to here. So it's a whole additional show, which with a much smaller live stream, members only. It's a little bit more, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And so we have conversations in this, it's kind of an organic, experience. It's not so much of a produced show as much as this is a produced show. It's a great way to support the work that we do here. It's a lot of fun. You can connect with other people in the community and like their stories on Locals and share their stories. And then of course, you also get access to the Telegram link, which is where the chat continues. So when the live stream ends here, the chat is over, but not on Telegram. The chat continues. It's the chat that never ends. And so we'd love to see you there. No matter where you join on YouTube or on Locals, you can grab the Telegram. And that's where you'll join us right now. We're streaming there right now as well. So we'll cut off on YouTube, we'll cut off on Rumble and Twitter, and it'll be a members only show. So stick around for that. All right. And so thank you for asking, and thanks for allowing me to give the long explanation of what that entails and what that means. If you want to join us, it's over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. You know where to find us. And we just had a new member join. Renee, welcome to the YouTube membership. We'll see you tomorrow morning for our members only stream. And don't forget to grab the Telegram link, which is in the community post section on YouTube. Get the private link and come and join us. Also, don't forget to get your Field of Greens over from fieldofgreens.com. You can save 15% with code Robert. The vegetables, they really want to be eaten. They love it. They're bursting with vitamins and nutrients, and you can get yours easily every day, 5 servings at fieldofgreens.com using code Robert at checkout. If you like this mind map and you want to use a mind map in your own production, in your own business, I use it for project organization, and I organize all my self-development stuff in there. spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap. You can just move these nodes around. It's very easy to use, and it's a lot of fun, and it's quite good looking. So you can get a free account at spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap. And we also had a chat come in from a super sticker. This came in from Renee. Thank you, Renee. Says video game controller gives a thumb up and says go. Oh, so it's a video game thumbs up. It's a super sticker. Says good game. Thank you, Renee. I appreciate you sending that in. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Let's say thanks to our mods who mod down the fort. I heard Vientikis is not here today. We missed him. We almost canceled the show because he's not going to be here, but hopefully he's here tomorrow. And John McGarvey was going to pick up the slack with some of the extra spicy comments, so we'll get over there, John, in a minute. Thanks. K-Bean is here, just cause. We got Playing Hooky. Thank you to Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Geomancy, Zach Nichols, John Allen in the house. We've got Janek, we've got Dog Digger, we've got Donut Mind Me, all modding down the fort for us, along with our friends Sleepy Dog Lee and Geegum Geegum, who gave me the ultra angry blowing off some steam, which is exactly how we all feel today. And so thank you to Geegum Geegum and everybody else who is a part of keeping the show on the train, on the tracks. But we are done for the day. Members, stick around. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you in a couple quick minutes. But otherwise, my friends, I hope you have a beautiful evening. We look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow at the same time so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down on our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.